Good day, Cherry Blossom family. This is Derek, Cherry Blossom CBD, of course. We are here with another episode of Friday with Friends. I say this every single week because we have great guests, and we have another great guest. We just keep them coming. Our goal of this entire thing is to shine light and spotlight people who may not be getting enough shine for what they're doing and their contributions to this hemp industry. And today, we have another one of those people, Jesse Kearns of New Bloom Labs. Jesse, welcome, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How's the Cherry CBD crew up there?
Oh man, we are all doing good. It's slightly rainy day here outside of Washington D.C., but you know we're making it, man. You know, DC is just one of those places, man. It's always something going on. It's either you think that they try to market it as a fast town, but as you can see, man, nothing moves faster.
That nor the politics.
That's it.
Legislation, all that slow stuff that's happening.
Like a lot of mud here, right? Jesse, tell us about yourself, your story, your professional background, and what led you into the hemp/cannabis testing aspect of this industry.
Oh man, I mean, I've had a colorful career and I've really been blessed to pursue my passions most of my life. I grew up in East Tennessee and attended the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. My professional career began in the stock car racing industry, fielding cars and winning championships with some of the greats like Richard Childress and Ty and Austin Dillon. And after 15 years of traveling up and down the road and getting a bad back out of the deal, I decided to move back to Tennessee and start a business with my brother. And that's how we started New Bloom Labs in 2019. And it was really started to alleviate that bottleneck in testing that we identified when Tennessee and other states in the South were first getting online with growing some hemp and cultivating hemp products. So we wanted to alleviate that bottleneck and be able to offer them quick local turnaround and wouldn't have to send it out west and wait on it 2 weeks.
Well, it was that way definitely a couple of years ago. So yeah. Thank you. New Bloom offers an array of testing services for almost every single arm of the hemp and cannabis industry, even soil testing. Talk about the importance of soil testing and how that is the first step in protecting the end customer.
Sure. Well, cannabis plants are what we call a soil remediator. This means that hemp plants are really good at taking in whatever compounds may be in the soil. And this goes for both good and bad substances. One of the most dangerous contaminants often found in soil are heavy metals. That's why you have to test the soil and your water supply first, because if it's in the soil or water, it will definitely end up in your plants. And the same goes for pesticides also. Many farmers will test their water and soil for pesticides and heavy metals before they ever put the first seed in the ground. Wow.
And that's good. I mean, it's good that people care enough to do that.
Yeah.
So in this space, I'm going to ask a silly question on behalf of some viewers. When someone goes and buys a bottle of tincture or capsules, and the testing says it's been tested for heavy metals, the mind of the consumer sometimes goes in this place where how can there be any heavy metals in this liquid or in this dry form? Touch on that a little bit.
Well, a lot of that has to go through how your cannabinoids were extracted into your liquid and what the extraction facility did. There's a lot of people that utilize local extraction or like basic extraction where they do it themselves. Mm-hmm. Or you might utilize a CO2 or ethanol processor to extract all those cannabinoids to do certain remediations. And the heavy metals test can, in certain instances, transfer over into the end product. Most times it should be remediated out, but you're basically just doing a quality control check to make sure that the processor or wherever that it was extracted into a crude is still doing their remediations and it was done clean. Because one you did at the beginning of the month might not be the same as one you did at the end of the month. So it's just making sure that all of those remediation tactics and all that stuff is getting cooked out and removed.
On a side note, this is, and I'm throwing you something that wasn't even in the questions here, but what I saw before was that I would send my stuff off to one of the larger companies at the time, a couple of years ago, and they would send me stuff back like, well, you have chromium or something in your, and I'm like, no, that's not possible. And then, well, we'll just test it again. And what that was telling me is that maybe they're not cleaning the machines in between time. Was I reading that the right way? Is that like common practice, just to kind of keep going and not slow the machine down or slow the process down?
Well, are you talking about testing or lab
So
testing?
the lab that's actually doing the testing, like what if maybe there was some chromium in the last batch of whoever's product you ran, and there was no cleaning or something in between, and then you ran this. Do you see that with your competitors? Is that kind of a common practice?
No, and I can't really speak to any other practices besides what's going on between my four walls of the lab. But
Okay.
I would suspect that normally you wouldn't have cross-contamination in a controlled laboratory setting.
Okay.
Most of the, cross-contamination and stuff like that isn't very common. It can be in some of the things you're using to extract the cannabinoids and to break them down. But at the end of the day, most of your tests will go in a vial that's about that big. And it's sanitary, and it comes in a little it comes in a medical box, and it's sanitary, and it's ready to rock. It hasn't been cross-contaminated with anything else. So we haven't really seen that. But what I will say is heavy metals results can be a little tricky, because we test for over 6 heavy metals. And some of them, like arsenic and lead, can be very concerning. And at certain levels can be even more concerning.
No doubt.
But some of the tests, and when I explain heavy metals tests to people, certain states will have acceptable levels or non-acceptable levels, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, you have to destroy your crop. You'll look at the legislative rules and see if it's over that. But if it's just a small number, and it's a small number that's reported in parts per million. So that's really, really small.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
A lot of them that are, barium or some stuff that is commonly found everywhere in Earth, Derek, I refer to that as dirt, because it's everywhere. It's dirt. You can walk outside and pick some up in the mulch, and there's going to be heavy metals in there.
No
It's
doubt.
the levels that they are, and if they are dangerous to humans, that's when you need to be concerned about it. And I'm not saying all heavy metals are safe, but some of these low levels are just dirt, man. It's just dirt.
It's just dirt. Okay. That's good to know, actually. That feels better, honestly.
Yeah, and you've got to refer to each of whatever legislative framework you have to work out of. So look at your state, look at what they talk about. Some are more scrupulous than others. As we all know, California is very detailed and requires a lot more than any other state. And that's, so you just need to be aware of the posture of your legislation that's around and adhere to those rules.
Your site says New Bloom is a leader in D8 or Delta 8 testing. How does testing for Delta 8 differ from testing from other cannabinoids?
Well, as an analogy, Delta 8 THC is nearly a twin to Delta 9 THC. And separating these nearly identical compounds in the lab and then measuring their concentrations accurately is a challenge for laboratories whose analytical methods just aren't very good. Right. Luckily, at New Bloom Labs, our proprietary methods and extensive professional experience in isometric separation have proven that we've been calculating these concentrations correctly ever since Delta 8 THC arrived in the market back in early 2020. And we encourage everyone to closely scrutinize their lab reports of Delta 8 THC products. Luckily, we put together some great information on what to look for in these reports, and you can find it all at testdelta8, the number 8, testdelta8.com.
Testdelta8.com. You guys heard it. I'm writing that down myself. There's not a big need for Delta 8 in this particular market, so I don't see a lot of it. Generally Delta 8 thrives better where there is not any form of legalization or medical, framework. So in Maryland, we have that. In Virginia, it's a hot mess, but they're doing something down there. I don't know what they're doing.
They're trying.
Everything's a hot mess, really. This is all kind of caught a lot of people by surprise, as you can see, because here we are almost 10 years later in some places, and we're still kind of like, I don't know what we're doing. You know what I mean? So we don't see a lot of Delta 8 here. So I'm kind of getting acclimated to it. You know what I mean? I shunned it at first. I was like, this is just, some hokey thing that people are using, trying to make money off of. That's not necessarily real, but it is real, and it is helping people. Definitely. And you're saying, and I don't know how much you guys see when you look under, I don't know, it's a microscope or something, like you see these two compounds. Are they really like just the same, or the same? For what I say, it's the same chemical composition in a different configuration. Is that?
It's the only difference is the location of one little tiny molecule. That's it.
Huh.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
It's kind of like a miracle, isn't it?
They have the same atomic weight. It's very hard to differentiate, and it's just something that came to us naturally when we established our SOP of extracting cannabinoids in the liquid at whatever matrix it is, and we've seen it ever since. And you know, it's all explained in that video. It does get very granular, and I could get down in the weeds about it for 20 minutes, but you know, we'll move on.
Well, you know, we got to keep people's attention.
That's right. Watch the video.
I saw that an ad that stated that New Bloom quantifies 19 cannabinoids in every potency COA. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely, because I have an update. It's actually 21 now.
Whoa!
We just
okay.
added, the 2 N-anomers of HHC to our list. So 21 total cannabinoids. You know, the hemp and cannabis industry is rapidly evolving, and innovative producers are finding all kinds of fascinating ways of separating new cannabinoids. And these are both synthetic and naturally occurring cannabinoids. So it keeps us on our toes. We monitor the evolving demand of these cannabinoids daily, and we're constantly adding new analytes to our potency analysis. So as of today, a potency test will calculate the concentrations of 21 cannabinoids all next business day turnaround. It's really the best value in cannabis. Wow.
That's really impressive. So you guys should be very proud of yourselves, man. You've done a lot in a short period of time. No doubt. That said, as for testing minor and synthetic cannabinoids, is each cannabinoid extraction approach differently? Is like a different process? Are there separate techniques for isolating and extracting each particular cannabinoid?
No, not necessarily. Not each cannabinoid, but there are various extraction techniques based on the matrix. A matrix is the substance that contains cannabinoids. So there are different extraction techniques for plant material versus topicals versus brownies or gummies, for instance.
Get out of here.
Yes, sir.
Huh. No one's ever mentioned that before. That might be a first that I've ever heard almost anyone in this industry say. Yeah. Because if you think about how things are sold, it's like, well, you could use it for this, 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 and this. You know? Very interesting. Oh, man, we could do almost a whole daggone show on that. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, at New Bloom Labs, we treat every sample as a blind unknown. We don't know what it is, and we don't ask what it should be or what it will be or, you know, what it's supposed to be. We're going to let you know what it is, and we can help you product formulate and make the best product based on the data. But we don't need a whole bunch of information of what it should be, and we don't hit targets. So we'll let you know, and we'll work together to make the best product for your brand.
You just let the sample tell its own story in a way.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. The last 2 years have seen a rise, as we talked about, in intoxicating hemp-derived cannabinoids like Delta-8, THCO. Now we're talking about THCP and even Delta-9. In your opinion, and given their position and your perspective in the industry, what is your perspective on them, and do you see these as permanent additions to the hemp and cannabis space?
Okay. Speaking to the synthetic cannabinoids, you know, these new cannabinoids certainly speak to the impressive innovation that hemp producers are relying on to separate themselves in the market. And it's a really neat thing to watch, you know, but the future of cannabis is really up to the regulators. It's clear that a lot of lawmakers take a skeptical view of these products. The industry has to come together to protect these markets, and we have to do a better job of it starting now. But to be clear, the quickest and easiest way to build an industry that's effective, profitable, and safe is to end THC prohibition everywhere.
No doubt. No doubt. And when you say come together, you're talking about the THC side of the industry as well as the CBD side, not necessarily working in combatants with one another, but working in conjunction with one another.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think if Delta-8 has taught us anything, is that something can come along and disrupt both of these markets. They're not independent of one another.
That's true. And because of certain Delta-8 bans that certain states have adopted, that is where these synthetic cannabinoids came up. They were developed as a workaround. If Delta 8's illegal in one state, then we'll come up with something that
No doubt.
is similar, but within the realm of the law and the USDA to still be able to have access for people. And New Bloom Lab supports cannabinoid access to everybody, but you need to know at what levels you're ingesting. And that's what we're seeing and talking about the stuff earlier is lab reports are all over the place. So you need to know at what levels you're ingesting your cannabinoids.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. As the industry grows, customers are caring much more about, I think we talked about foreign particles, molds, things like that. I think especially older people are like, well, I've done my time of getting stuff on the street. And even though we weren't talking about hemp then, you know what I mean? But if friends of mine, they tell me, I'd like to go to the dispensary because I want to know that I'm not finding dog hairs or God knows what, or it hasn't been sitting in some box on somebody's porch for 3 years, and then so, and all these things are very important. And mainly, I think people want to believe there's a difference between those days and now. Can you explain the difference between like molds, microbials, and mycotoxins for people? Because these words just sound like buzzwords if you don't know, or if you have.
Sure, and they can be intimidating. They can seem very granular and a little bit outside and intimidating. So, the words microbial or microbe are used as blanket terms to reference a vast group of microscopic organisms found everywhere in the environment. Think dirt, like bacteria, fungi, and viruses, for example. Microbiological analysis is the detection, identification, and counting of these microorganisms in a product. And because microbes can be pathogenic, beneficial, and benign organisms, the results of microanalysis give indicators of product quality, sanitation, and safety for consumers. Certain species of molds, which are part of the fungi group, produce naturally occurring metabolites called mycotoxins, and these are poisonous. They're found in foods and feeds across the globe and are of increasing concern because they cause disease in humans. You can control mycotoxins with proper drying and storage practices, but it's also critical to test for these mycotoxins regularly.
I tell people this. I was a chef by trade for a while, for the first part of my career. And, you talk to people, just lay people, about the dangers of consuming food and what could possibly happen. And they can really wrap their heads around that. And I think a lot of times people think that's because like these things are combusted, that the heat or what have you kills those mycotoxins. So like, have you ever heard, like, how common are these things found? Like, should customers be concerned? Have you ever heard of anyone like getting sick or having any sort of weird reactions because of something they've consumed through cannabis?
Well, that speaks to my point earlier. It should be remediated out, but it might not always happen. So, that's what you need to verify. And that's why our full panel products and retail products are important. There might be a full panel on the flower material that was done before. Well, you need to compare to that full panel to the one afterwards to make sure that numbers get zeroed out. And that's what we're here for. And we find mycotoxins in plant material fairly commonly, especially when the storage techniques for biomass are inadequate at preventing the growth of these microbes. But in general, no, they should not be in retail products, and they should be remediated out. And most times they are. It is in place, but you have to make sure it happens.
No doubt. I mean, this is very important stuff. You are really touching on and kind of digging in, to some really important subjects right here. You're really giving people some really good information and kind of offering us some clarity, because I got to believe that most people just, oh, well, yeah, pass, fail, whatever. They don't care as long as I get to go home. But this is things that people should be considering no matter what type of cannabinoid products they're getting.
You're exactly right. It's important. And I feel, and there's a lot of conversations you see at trade shows and stuff, it's these analytics that are going to win over the older guys, the guys you have to convince into the industry that have been fearful of marijuana their whole life and are not consumers of THC cannabinoids, but can absolutely get a lot of benefits of CBD and CBG and all the other cannabinoids that don't give you that don't get you high and don't give you that other, the other buzz. So, that is, those analytics are going to show those people that this stuff is safe and hopefully bridge the gap and instill some confidence in the industry.
No doubt, because I think it does suffer from a lack of confidence, both from does it get me high standpoint, and secondly, is it safe for me? Is it going to hurt me standpoint?
Yes.
Your company has labs in both Tennessee and Texas, two rapidly emerging hotbeds for hemp production and extraction. For those who may be thinking about doing business in Texas, please explain what the Texas shipping manifest is and why that is important.
Well, it's a very common question, Derek. And as a matter of fact, it's so common. We produced a YouTube video explaining how and when to use these forms.
Wow.
The Texas Transport Manifest and Chain of Custody forms is a state-issued document the farmer applies for online. These forms detail all the proper information the licensed samplers and laboratories need to perform the compliance test for your crop. What happened is during the first year of hemp cultivation, a lot of farmers failed because the legislative rules they had to adhere to were hard to find and interpret. This information gap led to farmers applying for their transport manifest late and going hot just because they did not complete their paperwork on time.
Wow.
My video explains how to navigate the TDA eApply website and the proper timing to utilize these documents, and that's very, very important. You can find this info at newbloomlabs.com. You go to the top of the page and click Texas Shipping Manifests. Has all of my information you need to put, because there's a lot of lab info you've got to put into the website to declare us as your lab. And then you've got to have sampler information and all that. And we show you how to do all that. I mean, there's no doubt it was hard the first year for farmers to get a hold of the TDA. We were smack dab in the middle of a COVID lockdown, and they were not working from their Austin offices. They were working from home. It was going to a central voicemail database, and they were going to try their best to get back to you. And I heard it all the time. Nobody can get a hold of TDA, and they were better, and they're getting a lot better. But during COVID, nobody could get a hold of anybody. And that's just the world we lived in for a year or so. And it is getting a lot better in communication for our government agencies. It's getting better.
And yeah, it's not like the questions are going to stop coming. I mean, we're in this new industry with very little framework and infrastructure. There's questions all over the place. There does need to be people there to answer questions.
Yeah.
Even in tough times. So which place, do you like spending more time? I'm assuming it's Tennessee because you're from Tennessee, but.
Oh, and Tennessee will always have my heart, but I love Dallas. I've been down here for about 2 years. It's a great city and a great state. And I love being part of building a hemp industry in a state that's so friendly to agriculture. Like I said before, the work has only just begun to build a permanent hemp infrastructure in our state.
Dude, you guys got a lot. I think Texas, for everything you hear, Texas is being supported by Texans. Texas hemp industry is being supported by the state, and that is key. Yeah,
it is important, and I mean, there's similarities between Texas and Tennessee too. The differences I would say are more toward like climate and stuff, but I would say there's more similarities than differences. They're both similar in the fact they're new and emerging industries that need help. Texas and Tennessee have taken the reins and began to self-regulate, but we need support from lawmakers to help create a framework for permanent, legitimate, consumer-safe, and profitable supply chain.
No doubt. I feel like sometimes what we're dealing with, half the lawmakers or part of them are like in on it. They're on somebody's board and they're really, really for it because it totally benefits them. And the other half are just so afraid. And it's like the children and what's going to happen. And, society's going to fall apart. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, that's not exactly what's happening.
I understand.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So we're not going to keep you too much long. We got a couple more questions. What's the one thing you want to know about New Bloom Labs? What's the one takeaway you want people to watch this and leave with?
Well, our company recognizes that not all analytical laboratories are created equal, and the industry needs a higher level of credibility and sophistication in the testing component on the whole. We are urging regulatory agencies to take a closer look at laboratory operations and the credibility of the reports that they publish. This will serve to boost legitimacy with consumers, like we were talking about, and policymakers for the hemp industry, which is still very much in its infancy.
Preach it, man. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. I know it's Friday. It's the end of our week. We're going to wrap this up. But first, we cannot, everybody gets it. You get the shameless plug. You know, this whole thing is about you and spotlighting you. It wouldn't be fair if you didn't get to tell our audience what you're excited about. If there are any promos, any, you know, I know you can't, people just can't go on your site. Not everybody can go on your site and use your services, but talk about maybe something new, something you're most proud of, something that's coming down the pike.
Yeah, so you know we're available at all points of the market. So really anybody can come get a test in anytime. A store owner that wants to verify something can walk right in and verify it. Our tests are $65 for potency. It's next business day turnaround on that potency test. So those guys can come in and verify anything they need. So the farmers that's testing their soil and water from the beginning, all the way up to the processors in the middle and the retail, we help all points of the market. And that's what we're here for. Retail products are extremely important to test. And a lot of farmers like to, you know, start making their own stuff and test their own stuff. And you got to keep an eye on that too. They extract stuff on their own and make their own products and take it to the farmer's market. And we, you know, got to keep an eye on that. So, you know, what we're proud of, and the main thing that I want to say is I just want everybody to go online, support our social media, New Bloom Labs on Instagram and Facebook. We do have a new YouTube channel. It's got 6 or 8 videos on it right now. We're supposed to be adding more content, but it really explains what I spend a lot of time talking on the phone, explaining over and over. The potency with density test, what the difference of that is compared to a regular potency test, white label COA capabilities, and how to go onto the website and get your TDA manifest. We have videos on there to educate farmers and retailers and processors on how to order the right test and when and where. We have a whole 8-minute video on Delta 8 testing and proper Delta 8 testing that really breaks down chromatography and human integrations that do occur during potency testing. And that could be the difference of being able to properly identify concentrations of Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10 in products. So if anybody has any questions, you can go onto our website at any time. You can chat with the bot who chats with me. Call me anytime. 844-TEST-CBD is how you get a hold of us. newbloomlabs.com, Facebook and Instagram. Please call us anytime. We'd love to help you with any of your testing needs.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed one of the premier minds in hemp and cannabis testing. I didn't even go into the fact that you're a VP of the Texas Hemp Coalition, you know, so you guys are trying to do some great things down there and move the legislative needle. Jesse, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for dropping some seeds of knowledge on me and as well as our audience. We're going to get this video over to you as soon as we post it, but you guys are doing some really good stuff down there. You're really leading the industry, and you should be very proud of what you're doing and like the base of knowledge that you guys are sharing. I mean, if you're a manufacturer, if you're a retailer, even if you're a consumer, the New Bloom Labs, man, New Bloom Labs.
Well, I appreciate that, Derek, and we appreciate your time today. If anybody at Cherry Blossom CBD or any of your clients come up with any questions or ask questions on your YouTube, feel free to call me at 844-TEST-CBD. So one of the things that differentiates and separates us from other labs is we're available. We're on the phone. We have great customer service in me and Chelsea and my brother. You know, we're a family-owned company, and we're here to answer the phone and be available when so many others aren't.
That's what I'm talking about, man. You guys are going to do fantastic. If you know, I know you already are, but seriously, you're going to make your mark in this industry.
Well, we're working hard, and we're going to continue to.
Are you see that? They're working hard for you already. That's what I'm talking about. Get these guys some business. New Bloom Labs, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have a great weekend.
See you, Derek.
Thanks, Jesse.